Hello, welcome. I'm going to be presenting to you today Nubia Society. So let's get started. But before we do, there's a 4 minute video that I would like us to watch together. And once we are done, we can start. I particularly want us to watch this video to start with because I think it sort of encapsulates most of or some of the things that we are going to be talking about in this presentation. So again, let's get started.
If you wanted to stop Africa from becoming a superpower, you wouldn't have to invent a new strategy. The blueprint has already been written, tested, and perfected over centuries. You'd start by making sure Africa never unites. The easiest way to do that is by keeping people divided along ethnic, tribal, and religious lines. If they ever start working together, remind them of past grievances. Stoke old wounds, fund separatist movements, keep border disputes unresolved. Make sure every time they take one step forward, they take 2 steps back because they're too busy fighting each other. You'd install leaders who serve foreign interests, not their people. Find the most corrupt, the most easily manipulated, the ones who crave wealth and status more than progress. Offer them power in exchange for loyalty. If a leader rises who actually cares about Africa, get rid of them. Assassinate them if necessary. But if that's too messy, just destabilize their government and back a coup. If they talk about nationalizing resources, make an example out of them. If they try to unite Africa, take them out before the idea spreads. You'd keep Africa economically weak by making sure it never industrializes. Let them export raw materials but never process them themselves. Control the mines, the oil fields, the rare earth minerals. Keep them selling cheap and buying expensive. If a country tries to break free and build its own industries, sabotage it. Place sanctions, destabilize its currency, fund local opposition, crash its economy. If that doesn't work, orchestrate a civil war. People can't build when they're too busy trying to survive. You'd make sure their education system produces workers, not innovators. Teach them history that glorifies their oppressors. Make them think their cultures are primitive. Their ancestors were savages. Their future depends on foreign approval. Train them to memorize, not to think critically. Keep their best and brightest looking overseas for opportunities. Make them dream of escaping Africa rather than fixing it. Offer scholarships that take their top minds to the West and never encourage them to return. Let the continent keep training doctors and engineers only for them to go enrich other nations. You control their narratives. Own their media. Control their stories. Dictate their image to the world. Make them believe they are corrupt, hopeless, eternally in crisis. Flood their screens with poverty porn and war zones. Show them charity ads that make them believe they are helpless without foreign aid. Downplay their successes. Twist their victories into isolated incidents. If an African country develops a groundbreaking innovation, credit a foreign investor. If an African leader implements a successful policy, frame it as an anomaly rather than proof of competence. You'd make sure they remain dependent. Drown them in debt. Offer loans with impossible conditions. Force them to privatize everything so foreign corporations own their water, their electricity, their land. When they struggle, give them just enough aid to keep them alive, but never enough to make them self-sufficient. Use charities to create a culture of reliance rather than resilience. Make them think foreign intervention is necessary, that they can't solve their own problems, that they always need help from the outside. You'd suppress their military strength. Keep their armies weak, their defense industries non-existent. Sell them weapons to fight each other, but never let them develop high-tech military technology. If a country tries to build a strong defense system, accuse them of being a threat to stability. Make sure they always need foreign peacekeepers, foreign military bases, foreign advisors controlling their security. Keep them vulnerable to invasion, coups, and foreign interference. The formula is simple. Divide, corrupt, exploit, miseducate, control. Keep them fighting each other. Keep them looking outside for solutions. Keep them poor, dependent, insecure. Make sure every attempt to break free is met with resistance so strong that the next generation thinks twice before trying again. This isn't a theory. It's history. The real question isn't how to stop Africa from becoming a superpower. It's how Africa can break the cycle, despite every effort to keep it down.
So, like the end of it, like the end of the video asked, I mean, the question the end of the video raised is, how do we basically get our agency back despite everything? How do we ensure that there is a promising future for all of us? And as a Pan-Africanist, I fundamentally believe that the answer lies primarily in our ability to unite collectively. Otherwise, if we are unable to, we are going to perish. So, and Nubia Society is our stab at just bringing about this unity. And yeah, without further ado, let's just proceed into the presentation so that you can get to know more about Nubia society and how we think we would achieve this unity that we so desperately need. Again, coming back to the question of unity, I believe in the doctrine of unity. I believe that it is the core principle, is fundamentally what needs to be in place before prosperity can happen, right? Before individuals and a society collectively can thrive. You need unity first, and that unity gives birth to security. And it is that security that guarantees sort of prosperity. So that's sort of the path, I think, that leads to prosperity. I think in the absence of that, it is just going to be more or less a vicious cycle. In the absence of unity, and when we are talking about unity, right? We are, mind you, you should note that when we are talking about unity, we are specifically referring to Pan-African unity on a continental scale, right? Because the world that we live in today is hyper-globalized. There are powerful, well-organized global powers that dictates to a large extent the reality of the world. So for an African or for an African nation to compete and be able to guarantee the sovereignty of its individuals or its citizens, right, in such a world, it is going to be, as it's quite evident, right, it is just going to be an Herculean effort. So a way to be able to guarantee this, a way to be able to achieve this genuine self-determination for Africans is by all Africans coming together, being able to collectively defend their interest. That's what brings security. And once they have security, all other things, right, would follow. As Kwame Nkrumah popularly noted, right, seek first the political kingdom, and every other thing will be added onto it. I must add a caveat, right, that it is not enough to have political kingdom or political unity. We also need to have the right institutions, the right setup to be able to ensure that that union, that unity bring about the collective security and prosperity. Yeah. So, but let's talk about just my Pan-Africanism journey, right? To start with, I grew up with a Eurocentric worldview, a very Western worldview. But that changed when I was about to enter university. I was supposed to school in Canada. Then all of a sudden, my father, he reneged on just the arrangements that we had, and that devastated me. To be honest, it was depressing. But in hindsight, when I look back, I realized that this was when my consciousness started taking shape, basically, because I had to uh, I had to self reflect. I needed to think about why I was so desperate to just leave Nigeria's shores. And I just realized that this can be attributed to my worldview and just the fact that I felt the most, even though this is quite subconscious, right? Um, Again, in retrospect, it is obvious that was the reality. I just wanted to run away because it felt like, our situation, our solution. I mean, the way to achieve a sense of fulfillment in this kind of world, even though I wasn't even conscious fundamentally of the challenges that confront us as Africans, right? Is just to escape, and then when you get to greener pastures, you would make things work. So, but it turned out that that didn't happen, and I started it, like, I began this journey of just trying to understand exactly why I was so desperate, and yeah, the antidote, the solution to that desperation. And it turned out that Pan Africanism is the philosophy. It gives it arms any African, right? Gives you the tool to not only define exactly what is going on, why our reality is sort of like this, but what can be done about it. And yes, since that time I've been on this journey, and this is another evolution in my journey, in just in my growth. This is another stage, and yes, and this has led to what I'm doing, right? And the reason why I'm doing this now is because it it's obvious to me that uh, um, we are in desperate times, and anytime such a situation or such shift in the geopolitical reality, or when when there's generally a big shift in, let's say, technology, or just the way the geopolitical arrangement of the world over the last say since the 7th century upwards, right? And Africa has not been prepared for this possibility, right? Suffered um, we've suffered significantly as a result. So, and I think that we are going through another type of such event that is potentially going to be cataclysmic in nature is happening right before our eyes, and we sort of need to. It's the time to take desperate action is now. Otherwise, right, um, it might be too late. So, and yeah, this all I would encapsulate this all as just my own personal Nubian awakening. I believe fundamentally that our ancestors are beckoning, they're calling on to us to take action because they know how dire our circumstances would be in the future if nothing is done. And I fundamentally believe that they are not only calling me, right? They are speaking to a lot of you. If you are watching this presentation, they are most likely also speaking to you. Yeah, that's pretty much what my journey has been so far. So, but we'll see what it will be in the future. So, let's talk about our long decline. Um, since about the 7th century, right, we've experienced cataclysmic events that have sort of set us back multiple times, from slavery to colonization. And meanwhile, the slavery was, I mean, it's this we we suffered from slavery from just two different directions. There was the Arabic trans-Saharan slavery, and there was also the transatlantic slavery from Europeans. So, like, and you can imagine how devastating such an experience uh, would have been, and we are still feeling the effect even up to today, right? So, and even without the before the slavery has been extirpated, right? There's also we moved on to real uh, colonization. I said real, but I mean we moved on to different forms of colonization in different places across Africa, and then that graduated to neo-colonialism, and now leading up to this present time where we are now experiencing a more nuanced type of colonization, something even more potentially more insidious, technological domination and technological digital colonization. So that has been just the trajectory over the past, ever since the 7th century ish. If you look at just this projection, right, it tries to use, it tries to just trace the social development trajectory of both the Western Europe, East Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and you would realize that just yeah, at every defining moment since the 7th century, when Africa has been unprepared, right, the consequences are the consequences have been devastating. And yeah, um, so there's again, my thesis is there is potentially in another moment similar to, let's say, the colonial uh, Berlin Conference moment, or say um, when the New World um, wo- when the New World discoveries, quote and unquote, were taking place. So and if this trend continues, right, the future of Africans, is potentially going to be, it's no doubt going to be very bleak. There is the Malthusian nightmare that is awaiting us if care is not taken. And what I mean by this is, you can see that uh, Africa is projected to add close to a billion people to its population, right, by 2050. So currently we're about 1.6 billion people, and a huge amount of us, a significant number of Africans today are unable to are, are are confronted by severe poverty, right? So now imagine adding over 100,000 people daily uh, to that dynamic. How do we feed them, right? So if we don't have agency, if we don't prioritize just being able to collectively ensure that we are food secure, and we can manage the demographic pressure that is coming in the near term, right? In the next 20 to 25 years. So there is that. There is also just the traditional debt trap that and just economic dependency that Africans have been subjected to for a very long time now. And there doesn't appear to be any end in sight. It appears that it's just even going to worsen. And there's even ecological climate vulnerabilities. They are potentially very, very cataclysmic events that are looming ahead, right? And if we just don't have a way to tackle these problems, right? I mean, what will happen? It is going to be very, very. It's we are walking on a very thin line, and um, I assume, I hope that you also recognize this, and there is this sense of urgency that because these things are, I mean, they are no joke. um, yeah, the technological lag is quite obvious, right? And then leading up, I already alluded to just the digital colonialization that is taking place right now. There are pandemic risks. We saw a small sample with the COVID-19 um, pandemic. Luckily, it wasn't so devastating. But imagine that I mean, there are, I mean, that should just give us cause for alarm, right? That, oh, we are so totally unprepared, and we would just continue. I mean, do we want to continue to rely on foreign entities to protect us, protect our health? I mean, no sensible society should uh, have such a policy. Um, so in essence, nothing, we can't rule anything out. Even hyper-colonialism, I mean, there are like a lot of threats ahead. So the only good policy, as I see it, is to just ensure that we have the capability, we have the agency to be able to confront these problems head on and solve them, so that we can even be like better for them. For them. So, in summary, right, there is a choice before us. It is between getting ruined or uniting, so that we can engender security and then prosperity. So, I fundamentally believe that the next 1 to 3 decades our final shots. If that's if, even if we are lucky, right? So if we do not take determined, purposeful action in the next 1 to 3 decades, right, towards just fostering that unity and ensuring that there is political unity across the continent so that we can collectively tackle the problems that will confront us together, right? We would most likely just perish. Um, so, no people, especially those that are divided, can survive forever under a constant siege because right now we are under a constant siege both from within and from without. So there are countless examples throughout history. So yeah, and those that are, for instance, the Jews, right? They've been able to circumvent this by finally uniting. And so there have been those that have been unlucky. They've totally been wiped out. Yeah, once again, we can't continue like this. Something has to give. I believe fundamentally that at this moment, right, the cost of inaction is so expensive. It exceeds the cost of acting radically, right? We need radical action. Otherwise, by not acting or by acting sheepishly, then I mean, it is going to be costly, basically. So now that brings us to the question of if this is sort of obvious, right, that we need to unite, why hasn't it happened? Um, I think you can just attribute this to the failure of the top-down approach um, that we've tried repeatedly. I think Africa, as it is right now, has been designed to perpetually stay divided. So we need to find a way to redesign this, I mean, the continent, so that again, unity, that sense of solidarity can be engendered, can be fostered. So the typical example is just the OAU then becoming the African Union, right? It presents this illusion of unity, but there's no unity, right? Because the member nations, they are prioritizing their own individual sovereignty over real integration. Then the current African Union, right, is politically fragmented. There is no enforcement power. It doesn't have any enforcement power over the member nations, and it is plagued by external influences. The most popular one, I mean, the most obvious one, or the one that has made the news, right? Even though I think it might not even be the most dangerous one, is the fact that the AU building itself was bugged and perhaps is still bugged, right? So yeah, um, there is also an internal rivalry between the member nations of the AU. So there are different blocks. And just all these things, right? This environment, this reality has ensured that dictatorships and corruption continue to thrive under the so-called guise of unity. Then there is also the just I stated earlier that the continent has been designed to remain divided. So and this is a consequence of just the European borders that were arbitrarily drawn that divided people along ethnic and cultural lines. And this has made unity even much more difficult. Then also, right, nationalist leaders, they just um, prioritize their their ability to hold on to power over just the continental vision. And we've seen that with the numerous border conflicts, the civil wars that have just continued to reinforce this division. And um, there is the elephant in the room, foreign influence, right? The neo-colonial setup. It's sort of like the invisible chains that is still frustrating our efforts towards unity and just towards security then prosperity. So, we, foreign powers, they continue to manipulate African politics, ensuring that the leaders that emerge are weak and divided and rely on just their patronage. Then policies, economic, political policies are largely dictated by external institutions. Yeah, and Africa is um, sort of a basically there is a lot of proxy wars, right, between the global players taking place also in Africa. There is resource exploitation. Yeah, there's a lot of external meddling basically going on. So this is, I mean, under these conditions, right, you would realize that uh, unity is untenable, right? Something has to give. Um, so I think a good case study is the AFCTA, so the Continental Free Trade Area. It sort of promised economic integration. All 54 African states will be economically integrated, and there will sort of be a free trade area across the continent. So, and if that happened, right, it would be the largest free trade area globally. 1.5 billion people would have no barrier. There would be no barrier to trading among 1.5 billion people, right? So, and it was expected to boost the trade between African states by up to 52% by 2025. But what is the reality, right? This intra-African trade still remains at 16%, roughly. And compare it to what it is in Europe or Asia, you would see that it is quite ridiculous. And borders still matter across Africa, right? Imagine that moving your goods from Lagos to Accra, it still takes longer than to London, right? Which is frankly very ridiculous. There is no other way to put it. So there is that economic fragmentation that is still in place, and even our trade, right, is still dominated primarily by global powers. So, and it's still controlled by primarily by global powers. So that's a case study, right? So this, and there are numerous others, but borderless travel across Africa, one passport, one currency. All these things have been proposed, but they are sort of yeah. I think they are largely propaganda. They are just avenues to deflect from the real issues. So and that's sort of going to persist with any top down approach, because the system, the way it is set up, has been designed to frustrate consistently such any effort to any attempt towards continental unity. So I think the alternative, right, based on this reality, is to try a bottom-up approach. So if the governments won't unite Africa, then the African people must recognize the importance of they all uniting, and the people must bring about that unity. And that's what Nubia Society stands for, right? A grassroots solution to African unity. So we think that we can foster and gender unity if it is powered by the people. It is built, if there is a society that is built by Africans on the continent and the diaspora, that is independent of all these bad actors, right? We can stimulate that process, we can bring about more unity among Africans. And we want to follow this approach, right? Just Pan African cooperation, just Africans from different tribes with different backgrounds, different belief systems cooperating, right? There is this cultural renaissance as well. And lastly, right, coming up with new governance models. Um, those are basically the three pillars that we want to stand on. And in essence, this is authentic Pan-Africanism. It's going to transcend colonial boundaries, and the main essence, the main purpose is so that we can reclaim our shared identity as Africans. So, in short, top-down unity has failed us for a long time now. So, and we need grassroots unity. We need unity that would come from below. That is what Nubia Society's plans and is going to try to facilitate. So I would ask you to reimagine that there is a clean slate, right? Reimagine Africa with a clean slate. What are we going to build, right? So beyond these inherited borders that we have and these extractive systems that are in place, what can we achieve? What can we build together collectively? So imagine just we Africans, right, are solving our problems and drawing on our collective strength and knowledge, our coordinating, using our ingenuity without in an unfettered way to solve the problems, existential and secondary problems that confront us, right? So that we can collectively be able to prosper, to thrive, to live a fulfilling life. Yeah, so I think the essential question is, if we can rebuild Africa from scratch, what can we create, right? I think, yeah, and the Nubia Society's promise is that, we are going to bring about a fundamental reimagination of what it means to be united as Africans, what it means fundamentally to be an African, right? So we are not just hoping for reform. We want a fundamental shift in the reality of Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora. And we see ancient Nubia as a blueprint. If it's not obvious by now, that's why our society is called Nubia Society. We see ancient Nubia as proof of the fact that even if we've declined, right, or we've experienced decline for an extended period of time, this is not permanent. It is just a phase, and it can be overcome. The ancient Nubians overcome. They, despite declining, they were able to repeatedly, consistently come back stronger, come back better. And beyond even the fact that Nubia is proof that our decline is not permanent, there's also historical precedent, right? For instance, when ancient Kemet, that's ancient Egypt, when its traditions got corrupted, Nubians took it upon themselves to restore, to reunify, to revitalize the traditions, the culture of ancient Nubia. So I think that's very symbolic. That there was a time when ancient Kemet lost its way, and Nubians took it upon themselves to restore a sense of normalcy, basically. And also, right, this is grounded in the groundbreaking research that Cheikh Diop did on just Nile Valley civilizations. Basically, most African civilizations, if not all, right, can trace their roots, their origin to the Nile Valley civilizations of ancient Nubia and also ancient Kemet, and to an extent, Axum, modern day Ethiopia. So, in essence, through every challenge, Nubia has endured, it has adapted, it has rebuilt itself and thrived, and that is exactly what I mean, we are inheriting that legacy, and we intend to carry it forward. So, Nubia is a reminder of who we were and can also be again. It is a symbol that transcends it. Every African, consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously, can. I mean, it transcends. It's something that it resonates, right? Um, so it transcends the modern division, um, all this false nationality, ethnicity, and religion. So yeah, that's why. I mean, that's why we see Nubia, ancient Nubia, as a blueprint for what we want to achieve. Um, so the mission of Nubia society is to bring about African unity. Um, that is quite obvious by now. But how we want to achieve that is through a radical, but yet it's a simple, straightforward approach. Uh, yes, I mean, the dilemma is the fact that our dilemma as Africans is we know, we sort of, at least well meaning Africans know that we need to unite to be able to protect our collective, um, to be able to ensure our collective prosperity, right? So, how do we achieve that? Historically, top down approaches have been proposed, but we are saying no, that is not the right way to go. We instead should start from the bottom up, right? So, in a way, this is quite radical. It's very different from the templates that have been tried. But we think it is also quite straightforward, right? It's quite obvious. Oh, let's start from little by little and expand from there. So it's straightforward. It's just that it has not been really tried previously. So yeah, we want to go from zero, basically nothing, to something. We want to start with a small, very focused community. So a micro community, and we hope that we can scale that community little by little. So that's our core thesis, right? We are starting small, with a very tiny fraction of Africans, and we would little by little continue to scale that until all Africans are united. So you can see it as we want to build a model community, and we want that community, we want to plant that community as a seed for a united Africa. So that community is going to be a model that others will look up to and others will use as a template. To be a proof that it will be a proof that our unity, right, is viable, and it's not only viable, it is the right thing to do. So yes, as I was saying, the vision is we want to build a prototype society, a society that, or this is what it means to have good governance. This is what Pan-African unity ideally should be. This is what Afrocentric excellence should be. And yeah, this is it. We've achieved this. Now, how do we replicate this across the board? And we believe that for such for us to have such a model society, right, we have to create very transparent systems, governance systems primarily. We have to create institutions that are anti-fragile and can't easily be disrupted or sabotaged. We want to create like a self-sustaining ecosystem, and yeah, like in our society, we want our society to be self-sustaining. We want to combine virtual and physical settlement. So if you go through our like the doc on Notion, for Nubia Society, we've itemized just the plan, how we want to approach this. We want to start with a virtual. I would encourage you to read that. We want to start with a virtual community first and foremost, then eventually transition to like a physical settlement. So yes, we are going to design this society so that it can scale and it can inspire other Africans as I was saying previously, that is the essence, right? To show, to demonstrate that unity is possible, and it is not only possible, it is the right thing, it is the proper thing, because right, we would be examples of that, the consequences, the aftermath that of that unity, even though it is on a micro level, like on a relatively small scale. And yes, it is very, very feasible. There's no reason why this can be achieved. That's the reality. That is the I mean It's even weird to me, at least, that I have to emphasize this, right? Historically, we've seen different precedents that demonstrate again that once a critical mass of people decide that this is what they want, right? Then the rest is history, basically. We've seen how the Zionist movement evolved from a single, or from kibbutzim to a nation. We've seen also the Muslim Brotherhood, just how they um, navigated or built their social influence to political power, even though was relatively, um, it was for a short period of time, but who knows what the future holds, right? And we've also seen the RSS in India, right? From doing cultural groundwork to political dominance in modern times, and also the Pentecostal churches in Africa, right? And I think even and beyond. There is also, yeah, there is, they've also achieved something similar, building institutions, building a community from the grassroots and all the way to mass influence. So in essence, there is no reason why we can't achieve this. We just need to be committed enough and understand that yes, this is the right approach. This is the way to bring about African unity. Um, so this is on the left is the first kibbutz in modern day Israel, and within 38 years, right, they declared their independence. Um, and also, right, the Muslim Brotherhood. This is their long march. The early days, and this is when Morsi was sworn in as the Egyptian president. Like I said, even though it didn't last for long, but it was a 99-year journey, and the society still exists today, and who knows what will happen tomorrow. And there's also similarly, right, RSS in India. So it started about 100 years ago now, and slowly but surely, um, yeah, they are a dominant force to be reckoned with in India today. Uh, and I mentioned the Pentecostal churches earlier. So there's the Redemption Camp with um, that can, I think it has over 10,000 plus acres, and it can house close to 15,000, and it houses close to 15,000. Close to 15,000 people currently live in the Redemption Camp, and also Canaan Land, right? It's a vibrant community. And there are also startup societies. I don't know what happened to the main image, but just there are people experimenting with the concept of traditional startups, like technological startups. There are also now people experimenting with societies similarly, right? Being able to build societies from the ground up. There is Praxis, there is Eternal, Afropolitan, Prospera. There. So what I'm saying is, with startup societies, right? There are a lot of experimentation going on. So and some of these things are ideas, they are concepts that we can also take advantage of to ensure that we have, or we build the best society possible for our members, for Africans. And I would say that we should trust the exponentials. We should really trust the exponentials initially, right? And it might not be as smooth, and I'll be the first to admit that it is not going to be uh, as smooth as this. I mean the curve, but eventually it will happen. It's just little by little at first, then all at once eventually. Um, to further buttress this, let me show. I sort of did a projection of just successful movements, some successful social movements in history. So this is Christianity, right? You can see, trust the exponential. Basically, you can see that it was an exponential curve. It is an exponential curve. It reached a tipping point at some point, and then it became inevitable. You can see the same thing for the Russian communism. You can see also an exponential curve. Um, there is Islam, exponential curve. There is the communism, similarly, right? Chinese communism. There is the Italian Risorgimento, the Zionist movement, like I said earlier. So, like all these are successful movements in history, and initially, the I mean the beginnings, the early days wasn't as how would I put it? In the beginning, things weren't moving as fast as towards the later end, right? Especially before the tipping point. But they eventually, with perseverance and persistence, and yeah, they reached the tipping point eventually. So I do not see why this would be any different for Nubia society. So in essence, we should trust the exponentials. It will happen eventually, little by little, and all at once. But this is not a solo mission. There is a popular African adage, right, that says if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together with others. So, and historically, this is the reality for Africans, especially. We've always had individual geniuses, but to be able to achieve progress, genuine progress, especially in the modern in this globalized world that we exist in today, we need collective action. So Africa's future, it requires unity around a common cause. There is no two way about it. There is no other alternative. There is no other way, right? We need to unite to be able to once again. I might sound like a broken record, right? But it is because it is. The concept, the notion of our. We must unite. We must unite, and we must unite well. In the absence of this, we would continue. This will continue, and it will get worse. And eventually, who knows? We might be subjected to very, very depressing, devastating, cataclysmic events. So, we need to unite around a common cause, and Nubia society has to foster that. We need to ignore the idea of achieving this from the top down. We have to start from the ground up, little by little, at first, but eventually to add up. I have again, why now, right? To reiterate, we stand at a crossroad as Africans. We can either act now, or we face irreversible decline. So we either build economic, technological, we either build sovereignty, independence, self-determination. We either achieve that, or we slide into a nightmare that is more depressing, that is worse than what our ancestors must have experienced previously. But I do not think that the situation is hopeless. I think, and that is why now. I think we have a real window of opportunity. Like I said, we have between 1 to 3 decades to together a movement that can allow us, that can grant us the opportunity to start to reshape, to control our destiny, to reshape our future. So, in essence, right, your expertise and your commitment, if you agree with our principles, requirements, and our vision, these things are your contribution is going to make a huge difference, right, in just ensuring that this vision comes to pass, and yeah, we achieve the African unity that we've desperately needed for a very long time now. Um, so, what we expect from founding members of our society is just a buying into the principles. You again, please go and visit our Notion page. You can see, you can um, you can access it on nubiasociety.github.io. So you see our principles there. You would see the requirements, and you would see our vision, how we plan to achieve the vision. So if you buy in, if you agree with these things, right, you are automatically you are a step closer to being part of our society. Then just know that we require your time, we require your insight. We want you to actively participate in this task, the work of building our community, evangelizing, recruiting, bringing more Africans to the fold, making more Africans realize that we need to unite. That is the only choice for us. The alternative is, except you want that, and which in a way, if that's sort of your what you desire, then we are not. I mean, I mean, we are enemies in that case, right? Right. If you do not desire collective security and prosperity for whatever reason, um, yeah. So anyway, what I was trying to say is that we want to build this community together with you. So please go through our doc if you haven't already. Um, then expect that would require your time, your insights. We want you to actively participate once you join our community. And I will be the first to admit that there are big questions, there are things that we need to figure out together. Um, Things like, how do we govern our society, right? We are going to have, we are going to come up with ways, mechanisms, institutions. We are going to design this together collectively. Also, right, how do we ensure that our society is economically self-sufficient and is thriving? How do we create, how do we forge that sense of belonging among members? How do we safeguard our community against sabotage, subversion, I mean bad actors in general, right? How do we even become better for it? Yeah, so, and how do we scale our society? How do we grow it beyond the initial founding members? So these are fundamental questions that we all working in tandem to figure out. So ask anything. You can reach me on Telegram or Twitter. Ask anything. We are going to have more calls like this, more public events. So you have more opportunities, and if it's something that you are interested in, you are going to be able to join our group. So you would be able to ask anything, challenge everything, right? Like I said, we have to collectively refine, refine this future together. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Yeah. So join us. Let's build Nubia together. Let's build a new vision of Africa. Let's start this important work of African unity. Let's do it together. So the Berlin conference, it took 3 months to divide Africa. It took them 3 months to carve up Africa, like like beef. So let's see what we can build in 30 years. I'm sure, right? And with the backing of God and our ancestors, I'm sure that yeah, we would build something tremendous, and something that our ancestors, our children will thank us for. So I will end on this note, right? May our ancestors guide us, may our actions honor them, and may our children thank us. We are Nubia, we are Africa, and we will rise again. Thank you.